Hello and welcome to Sonic Lore, where I retell the history of things in the Sonic series. In today's video, I'll be retelling the history of the Echidnas from the Archie Sonic series. If you've seen my Death of Earth and Birth of a Kingdom video, then you'll know that I talked about the origins of the Echidnas before. But for those who didn't watch the video, I'll gladly repeat the information. Back during the early ages of Mobius' history, the Echidnas were the first Mobians to walk the planet. They were also the most intelligent of all the other Mobians, but due to their intelligence, they feared that the knowledge that they held could cause more harm than good. They feared it so much that they even declined to join the society of Sally's ancestor, Alexander Acorn. This was all the information that I talked about in my previous video. Continuing from where I left off, after the Echidnas had distanced themselves from the other Mobians, they settled down on an isle that was near the shores of the Kingdom of Mercia. They would name their home Albion. It was thanks to the Echidna's intelligence that Albion had become an advanced utopia for their kind. They accomplished many achievements within Albion, but there was one adventurous group called the Knuckles Clan who had decided to explore the world beyond their city. The clan left their homeland by boat and would sail for some time until they eventually landed in the mysterious Cat Country. However, little did the Knuckles Clan know, the mysterious Cat Country was home to a group of natives called the Felidae. The Felidae were cat-like Mobians who usually kept to themselves, but were very unwelcoming to those who would trespass on their land. The Knuckles Clan was soon attacked by the Felidae when they were trying to build their new home. The Knuckles Clan was successfully able to defend themselves from their attackers, but the attack had caused a rift between its members. They argued amongst themselves about whether or not they should stay and defend their home or leave to some other place. The warrior faction of the clan, led by Pakamak, had decided to stay and fight, while the rest of the clan had decided to not only leave, but to also abandon their clan name. One day, Pakamak along with his daughter Tikal and the rest of the clan had discovered the mystic ruins. Within the ruins lied the altar of the Chaos Emeralds. The altar housed 7 Chaos Emeralds and a special emerald called the Black Emerald. It was also home to the friendly creatures known as Chow. Before Pakamak could find out more about the altar, he received word from one of his scouts that the Felidae were planning to attack again. He ordered Tikal to stay at the altar while he and his men battled their foes. Tikal quickly became friends with the Chow and even befriended the guardian of the Chaos Emeralds, Chaos. However, her moment of peace ended when her father and his men had returned from battle. The fight with the Felidae had gone terribly, and Pakamak, in his desperate state of mind, had decided to seize the power of the 7 emeralds and use them to end the Felidae threat. Tikal tried to convince her father to not take the emeralds, but Pakamak refused to listen to her. Pakamak and his men charged at the altar, and they harmed the Chow in the process. The attempted theft of the emeralds and hurting the Chow caused Chaos to become enraged. He used the power of the emeralds to turn into his perfect form and wipe out the Knuckles Clan. Meanwhile, the group of Echidnas who had left Pakamak and his warriors eventually settled down in Down Under. It was in this place where they built the tech-based city of Echidnaopolis. Life in Echidnaopolis was blissful for its people for many years, but it all changed when the first known major event in Echidna history occurred. One day, the ancestors of Knuckles, known as Jordan and Kailala, had discovered a white comet that was heading towards the city at a dangerous rate. Kailala called everyone to the Hall of Learning and told them about how the comet was going to soon destroy the city. Her solution to the incoming threat was to make the city float by using the power of the Chaos Emeralds. However, one Echidna named Archie objected to her plan as he believed that the Echidnas were not meant to live their lives up in the skies. A debate occurred with the results ending in the High Council agreeing to Kailala's plan. Archie could not accept the council's decision, so he proposed that he should be allowed to take anyone with him away from the city if they willingly chose to follow him. The council agreed to his terms and even helped him gather as many followers as he could. At the same time, Kailala's plan had begun going into action. The first part of her plan was to go to the countryside in order to excavate a large number of Chaos Emeralds. It took some time, but she and her group were able to acquire 12 of the emeralds. They then placed the emeralds in the special caverns that was below the land. With the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and with some help from the Fire Ants, Echidnaopolis and the land around it took flight, and from then on, became the floating island. Before the last part of Kailala's plan took place, Archie and his followers had left the city with as much as they could carry. The wandering echidnas tried to make their home in several places, but the places that they tried to settle down in were either already occupied or they were chased out by those who would harm them. The technology that they had brought with them soon became useless and they were forced to abandon it. During one night, Archie was visited by the Ancient Walkers. The Ancient Walkers had come to tell Archie that they would help him look after his followers. It was after that fateful visit that Archie and his followers decided to travel to Albion with Archie as their first mitre. For many generations, the echidnas had lived peacefully on the floating island. However, their peace would be broken by Jordan and Kalala's descendants, Edmund and his brother Dmitry. While most of the echidnas had gotten used to living on the floating island, Edmund and Dmitry were one of the few who wished to return the island back to the land it had separated from. In order to accomplish their goal, the two brothers oftenly visited the Chaos Chamber, which was the same cavern that Kalala placed the Chaos Emeralds in. Edmund and Dmitry were studying the power of the Chaos Emeralds each time they visited the chamber. They did so that they could find a way to safely return the island back to the Earth. Eventually, they were able to create a machine called the Chaos Siphon. The Chaos Siphon was designed to slowly absorb the power of the emeralds, thereby making it possible to safely return the island to its original place. On the day of their last visit to the Chaos Chamber, Edmund and Dmitry were scheduled to present their plan to everyone in the Hall of Learning. After Edmund explained the details to their plan to everyone inside the hall, Dmitry was confident that it would be approved, but the Chief Magistrate denied it. The Chief Magistrate stated that he was not willing to endanger the lives of everyone on the floating island simply based on a plan that had not been tested beforehand. Enraged by this, Dmitry stormed out of the hall and took the Chaos Siphon to the Chaos Chamber. When Edmund had caught up to his brother, Dmitry was already using the Chaos Siphon to absorb the power of the emeralds. In his state of madness, Dmitry had upped the absorbing power of the Chaos Siphon, causing it to explode and shatter 11 of the 12 Chaos Emeralds. Thankfully though, the floating island was still afloat thanks to the power of the last Chaos Emerald. The Chief Magistrate shortly showed up after the incident, having followed Edmund to the Chaos Chamber. Edmund and the Chief Magistrate believed that Dmitry had perished in the explosion, but their belief was quickly dispelled when Dmitry revealed himself. Dmitry explained that when he had absorbed the power of the 11 Chaos Emeralds, he had obtained godlike power. Dmitry had become consumed by the power that the Chaos Emeralds had granted him, and he used his newfound power to construct himself a dark tower. His first order of business was to imprison the unconscious bodies of his brother and the Chief Magistrate inside the tower. When Edmund and the Chief Magistrate woke up, Dmitry gloated about how he was now an all-powerful being. He then told his captives that he had used his powers to reprogram the robots in Echidnapolis to enslave their people, and that he had planned on using the floating island to help him bring his own twisted sense of enlightenment to the Mobians below. It seemed as if Dmitry had won, but unknown to him, the fire ants had been eating at the foundation of his tower in order to cause it to collapse. The fire ants freed Edmund and the Chief Magistrate before the tower fell, but Dmitry in a shocked state was buried under it. Just before Edmund and the Chief Magistrate escaped from Dmitry's tower, Edmund's son Steppenwolf and Dmitry's son Menakir had arrived at the scene. Steppenwolf was relieved to see that his father was safe, while Menakir was heartbroken about the loss of his own father. Edmund mourned the loss of his wayward brother, but the Chief Magistrate assured him that this was just a lesson of the dangers of trusting technology. It wasn't long after the incident that Edmund was appointed as the floating island's first guardian. Due to Dmitry's actions, the citizens of Echidnapolis casted a vote on either keeping their technology or getting rid of it. The results ended in most of the citizens agreeing to rid themselves of their technology. But the echidnas could not bring themselves to destroy the tech that they had built, so they instead placed the collected technology underground in the Grand Conservatory. Edmund and Steppenwolf were doing their part by going around and collecting whatever tech they could from the citizens, though they were met with complaints from those who did not want to part with it. During one of their scheduled collections, Steppenwolf had tried to warn his father about a possible rebellion led by some cloaked figures. These individuals secretly called themselves the Dark Legion. Edmund quickly dismissed his son's concerns and continued with his business, but Steppenwolf had decided to spy on one of the Legion's rallies. Steppenwolf was successfully able to sneak his way into one of the Legion's rallies, and he was even able to see their leader, who was a masked person known as the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster preached about following Dmitry's ways and how it was wrong for them to give up their technology. Steppenwolf tried to climb up a pole to get a better view of the situation, but he was quickly spotted when the pole had made a loud sound. The Grandmaster ordered his followers to kill Steppenwolf, but he had already fled. Steppenwolf was able to steal one of the Legion's vehicles and tried to use it to escape from his pursuers, but he was quickly shot down by one of them. Meanwhile, a fire ant known as Christophilus had brought news to his queen about the echidna's situation. After thinking about what to do, the queen agreed with Christophilus' concerns and ordered him to become Edmund's guide. He immediately teleported to Edmund, who was contemplating about the current state of his people and what he could do for them. Christophilus warned him that Steppenwolf was in trouble, and before he could say more, Edmund had already left to go rescue his son. Edmund soon arrived at the scene where Steppenwolf had crashed, but 2 Legion members were already there. He quickly took out both of them, but was shot in the back by 2 others who had just arrived. After the 2 members had left, Steppenwolf came out from his hiding place and was heartbroken by the sight of his dead father. Christophilus appeared next to the grieving Echidna and offered to become his guide in order to help him take his father's place as guardian. For some time, Christophilus had Steppenwolf train his body, mind, and learn how to use the Chaos Force. Once his training was complete, Christophilus took Steppenwolf to the Chaos Chamber and had him use the Chaos Emerald to tap into the Chaos Force, thus granting him the ability to glide and along with many more powers. Before Steppenwolf could take up his father's mantle, Christophilus guided him to a secret place that the Fire Ants had built for him, called Haven. Haven was to be the base of operations for him and his successors. When Steppenwolf came back to his home, the Dark Legion had already declared open war on the people of Echidnaopolis. Steppenwolf went to the High Council's chambers to try to convince the council to not give in to despair. However, he was met by an echidna named Garak, who blamed Steppenwolf and his family for their current situation. Things escalated when Garak suggested offering Steppenwolf's life to the Dark Legion in order to secure their safety. He took out a gun and pointed it directly at Steppenwolf. However, Steppenwolf walked up to Garak and pointed the gun directly at his heart in order to show Garak that he was willing to self-sacrifice himself for his people. This deep act of commitment to his people caused Garak to drop his gun and regret what he had just done. Before Steppenwolf left to confront the Dark Legion's Grandmaster by himself, he convinced everyone in the room that they should not give in to the Dark Legion's terror and that they should try to make peace. Steppenwolf met with the Grandmaster in the hopes of making a peaceful agreement. However, the Grandmaster had an assassin who was aiming his gun at Steppenwolf during their conversation. Steppenwolf quickly realized this and used his chaos powers to disarm the assassin. The Grandmaster was furious that his assassination attempt had failed, so he quickly pulled out a gun and shot at Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf not only dodged the shot, but disarmed the Grandmaster with a rock. The Grandmaster tried to get the jump on Steppenwolf, but failed and was unmasked by him. When the Grandmaster was unmasked, he was revealed to be none other than Steppenwolf's cousin, Menakir. Menakir explained to his shocked cousin that he wanted revenge on Edmund and him due to the death of his father Dmitry. He then further explained that one day, when he had visited his father's grave, a strange green glow was emanating from it. Menakir took this glow as a sign of his father telling him to continue what he started. Steppenwolf had seen how his cousin was consumed with madness like his father. He then used his chaos powers to summon a portal that sucked in Menakir and his forces into a place where time was slower for its inhabitants, called the Twilight Zone. Years later, Steppenwolf would have his own son named Moonwatcher. While teaching his son how to be a guardian, Steppenwolf constantly thought about and planned for the day when Moonwatcher would join him on his duties. Steppenwolf had decided that in order to protect the Chaos Emerald and the floating island, he would need to watch out for trouble from within the island and outside it as well. One day, a group of overlanders led by one of Ivo Robotnik's ancestor, Brutus Kentobor, visited the floating island. Brutus had tried to trick Steppenwolf into believing that he and his group had come in peace, but unknown to them, their ill intentions were being read by the telepathic powers of the Fire Ants. The fire ants telepathically warned Steppenwolf of the Overlanders' betrayal, and so he used his chaos powers to deliver intense pain to the invaders. Steppenwolf stopped the pain that Brutus and his group was going through only when they agreed to never step foot on the floating island again. Steppenwolf and Christophilus had decided that one guardian was not enough to protect the floating island and its inhabitants from unforeseen dangers. So when Moonwatcher was ready to become a guardian, Steppenwolf invited his son to Haven to help him. Steppenwolf and Moonwatcher would sometimes switch shifts, with one guardian watching over the floating island, while the other scouted for any potential danger from the surface. This routine had went smoothly for decades. Moonwatcher had a son named Harlan, who joined the Guardians in Haven when he was ready to become a guardian. Harlan's son, Rembrandt, joined as well, and it was he who would christen the group as the Brotherhood. But things changed during the time when Rembrandt's son, Aaron, was a guardian. During Aaron's third trip to the surface, he came across a squadron of Overlanders wandering through a forest. It wasn't long before Aaron found out that the Overlanders were in league with an older Manicure and his Dark Legion. Manicure and his group had somehow escaped from the Twilight Zone, and they planned on using a missile to destroy the floating island. One of the Overlanders suddenly activated the missile, but Aaron quickly tried to stop it before it could launch. Manicure tried to stop Aaron from ruining his plans, but he had inadvertently told Aaron how to set off the missile. Having no choice left since the missile had already launched, Aaron detonated it, thus killing himself along with Manicure. The Dark Legion had been sent back to the Twilight Zone, and Rembrandt was devastated over the loss of his son. Rembrandt's other son, Jordan, wanted to take up the place of his recently departed older brother. Unlike his brother, Jordan not only had to do his guardian duties alone, but he did not join the Brotherhood until much later. Due to the death of Aaron, the Brotherhood had changed how they interacted with future guardians, and they decided to hide themselves from the world. Some time had passed, and it was during the time of the current guardian, Hawking, when another major event in Echidna history occurred. Hawking had been investigating a case where some looters had been breaking into some storage depots. When he had arrived at a recently broken-in depot, he discovered that the looters were the longtime foe of the Echidnas, the dingoes. Hawking pursued the fleeing dingoes, and after a fierce fight, he had caught them. However, it wasn't until later that Hawking found out that the dingoes had acquired and launched nuclear missiles at Echidnapolis. The situation had forced Hawking to break the vow that the Guardians had made ever since Edmund's time by using the technology that was stored in the Grand Conservatory. Hawking acquired a remote that would activate Echidnapolis' energy shields. The energy shields were able to protect Echidnapolis from the missiles, but the nuclear fallout from the missiles threatened to destroy the entire island. Since there was no way to evacuate the residents of the floating island, Hawking turned to Dmitry's research papers for a solution. He learned that Dmitry had theorized about the existence of other zones, and so using Dmitry's notes, Hawking had built the Hyperzone Projector. Hawking used the zone projector to first transport the residents of the floating island to one zone. He then transported the dingoes and their city to another zone, and finally transported the echidnas and Echidnapolis to a zone as well. Hawking planned on returning everyone to the floating island once the nuclear waste had been cleaned up, but due to not having a strong enough energy source for the zone projector, he couldn't return the echidnas or the dingoes back to the island. This wouldn't be the end of the echidnas' troubles though, but that's a video for another time. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you stick with me for more. Thank you.